My question is of the Premier and Minister for Trade. Will the Premier update the House on what was in last night's federal budget for Queensland and how it compares to other states?
I call the Premier.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for Pine Rivers for that very important question, Mr Speaker, because I know the member for Pine Rivers and every single government member here believes that Queensland should get its fair share from the federal government, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, perhaps on the other side they want to back their colleagues in South Australia and New South Wales. We hear nothing from those opposite about standing up for Queensland and demanding from the Morrison government our fair share, Mr Speaker. And as we know, that some 80,000 people are projected to move here, and you can't blame them. You can't blame people wanting to move to Queensland, the best state in the nation, Mr Speaker, with a government that cares about them and their families, Mr Speaker. But, Mr Speaker, the first step we can do is to start getting extra funding from the federal government when it comes to infrastructure in this state. And let me go through it again, just in case those opposite missed it earlier on. New South Wales is getting $3.3 billion, Mr Speaker. South Australia, $3.2 billion. And Victoria, $3 billion, Mr Speaker. We get $1.6 billion, and really, when you look at the forward estimates, you've got to wait 10 years, but there's only about $800 million over the next 4 years, Mr Speaker. That is disgraceful. It is absolutely disgraceful. And, Mr Speaker, we hear those opposite talking about health. Well, I'd like to see some funding from the federal government to enable our aged care residents that are currently in hospitals, would free up 600 beds immediately. Do we see those opposite talking to Canberra? No. Do we see those opposite advocating anything in the federal budget? No. There's silence, absolute silence from those opposite. And we know the Leader of the Opposition likes outsourcing to the member for Kawana. Well, if you're listening to the member for Kawana for advice, I tell you now, you're going down the wrong track. You listened for the last 3 or 4 years, you got nowhere, and now you're listening again, Mr Speaker. But, Mr Speaker, it's also— Well, Mr Speaker, I'm glad the Leader of the Opposition interjected, because the old gang's getting back together, Mr Speaker. When it comes to going back to the future, you know, listening to health—
Order!
The Health Minister, Lawrence Springborn, coming back to give advice, Mr Speaker, and of course,
Member for Everton.
The Leader of the Opposition's hero. We know
Member for Mermaid Beach.
We know who the hero is. Campbell Newman. You know, Campbell Newman's coming back as well. You know, there's no future vision. They're not looking to the future. They're looking to the past. They're looking to the past. So, Mr Speaker, I think all of those opposites should take a deep, long look at the structure of
Premier's time has expired.
Get house in order.
Speaker.